Hey everybody, welcome to today's show. I really want to get to the point of having someone that you love suffering with PTSD can be such a hard situation. It can really frustrate the relationship. I know of numerous people who've walked away from relationships because, they're not able to stick around. It's really challenging. Sometimes the loved one can be very aggressive, and that makes it very hard to be in a relationship. But I wanted to give you a few tips. Right? I wanted to give you a few tips and strategies that you could use to understand the situation more and also maybe take care of yourself more. Because when you're going through this, it's not only about you, it's also about them. In the beginning, it may feel like you need to be with them 24/7. You need to really be there to comfort them, to hold them through this growth period, but that's not necessarily true, and it's not necessarily healthy to do. And I also want to remind you that this is just a phase. Sometimes we go through days in our lives that seem like it's never going to end. But my friend, it will. They're not always going to have these symptoms. As long as you're making effort within themselves and doing the things within their lives that they can do, they're going to slowly, the symptoms will minimize. Now, when you want to begin to heal, it's a process. And it's got to be done in kind of an appropriate manner. You don't want to just jump into it and go in any direction because it's going to take longer. Or maybe you're not telling people. The people that have and are suffering with PTSD aren't telling you that they're going through that. They just kind of have reactions and they're going through certain symptoms, and you're like, look, it feels like you might have something, and they're not telling you this. And this can make it a lot easier, a lot harder, actually, going through this. But you know what? Today, I want to focus on you. I want to focus on you as a supporter, on the person that's there for the person suffering with PTSD. I want to give you some understanding of what they could be going through. And then also give you kind of some tools that you could use to help get over that. So some symptoms, right? Signs that you may seen of your loved one going through this. Because when you can understand their experiences better, you then can kind of help them walk along. If you don't have a clue what they're going through, how can you help them? So they may not tell you what they're going through, but I'm going to give you a few examples of some symptoms that they could be going through so that, it helps you understand them a little better. So my first question for you is what they go through. Do you know what they went through? Maybe they didn't even tell you. Maybe they haven't opened up because they don't want to cause you pain. Now that's a huge reason why people don't share their trauma. They feel that if they were to tell you what they went through, then you would feel the way that they do. So telling them and talking to them and saying, look, I know you've been through something horrible, but by you telling me, it's not going to cause me to go through the same experience. I just want to be there for you. I want to be that person that you can count on, but I need to kind of know. Another question is, how close was it? Did it just happen within last few weeks? Maybe it's been years and they're still struggling with it. These are different things that you need to ask yourself. And when you find out what it is, you'll kind of get a timeline of what happened and when it took place. And this is when you can say to yourself, okay, I know how to begin this. Are they able to talk about it? Maybe it happened so recently. I remember when I went through my traumatic experience, I wasn't wanting to talk about it. I didn't care what people said to me. And that's an understandable thing too. And you have to allow that. And you have to say, okay, look, I know that you're struggling, but if you're not going to talk to me, please go talk to somebody. You need to get it out. You need to free yourself from the pain that you're in. And I can promise you, my friends, once they've gone and talked to somebody, they will come back and talk to you. But if you can't be there for them and you understand, I want you to understand this right off the bat, my friend, is it's going to be a long process. PTSD is an uncurable disorder. it gets a lot easier to live with. But even myself, it's been 12 years and I still have moments of anger or moments of frustration. And it's all about certain things that you do in your lives. So you have to begin to understand that this is going to be a long haul. So what are some of the triggers that you might be seeing? Maybe some of the triggers are unique to each person because of their trauma, right? Now, I know my triggers is my son's name. When I hear the name Lucas, it kind of triggers me a little bit, and I go, man, that was my boy. I miss that. But that wouldn't be a trigger for someone else. Some triggers can be like loud noises. A car driving by can trigger people. Smells. Now, prior to losing my son, I worked in a funeral home. And there are still smells to this day that when I smell them, I'm like, oh. And it brings up a vivid image of that person that I was dealing with at that time. Because it's within my mind. And smell is one of the biggest triggers. Simple things like you don't even realize what can trigger people. Locations, maybe other people. These things can set the person off. And you could be like going into a restaurant and hear a name, or someone could drop something and the person could go into like an overall panic attack and be like, I gotta go. I can't do this. I gotta go. And you're like, what's going on? But that had triggered something in them. And as the support person, you have to be like, yep, I'll pay the bill. Let's go. Right? One of the best things that you can do for your loved one is to create a safe and supportive environment. It doesn't matter what they're going through. They're going through something. Be that support for them. Right? Maybe you have to leave the situation to remove triggers. Sometimes my wife and I had to actually leave, like we moved away from the Lower Mainland in the time that we were there. We've been able to come back, but there are sights, sounds, smells associated with this trauma that this person is not going to tell you about. You're just going to have to be self-aware and figure these out on your own. And there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, you know what? I noticed the other day that when this thing crashed, we had to leave. The loud noises bother you? Or what sets you off? Because I want to be able to make sure that we don't go around those areas. Right? Maybe there's people, locations, things that recall the trauma. If you know these things, you'll be able to kind of create that life and still be able to help that person get through their times, because we don't know. Are there significant dates or times, right? Anniversaries. Like I know my mom is one of the worst for this, and she'll bring up my son's death day, right? The day he died. She'll be like, oh, it's November 5th. And I'm like, so? I don't celebrate his day of death. I celebrate his birthday, which is July 8th. So that day is important to me. And that day means something. What about the nature? Maybe whatever happened in wintertime or summertime. And these times, like for people who have lost loved ones, Christmas is always a hard time for them. Right? That's the season that they can't work through. But over time they will. One of the biggest triggers I find is the media. Media telling you a story that you relate to your story. This can fully cause problems. Situations that feel confining. Right? If you're stuck in traffic or at the doctor's office, maybe you're in a crowd. I know crowded sometimes can cause distress to people that don't like their trauma set off crowded kind of feelings. They were fine before, but now since their incident, they can't do it. Relationships, school, family, these are all different triggers that you need to pay attention to as a support person. If you want to be there for your loved one, you really have to say, okay, what can I do for you? Now, those are a lot of external triggers. Now, I just want to talk about some internal ones that you can't know about, right? Some physical discomforts that they may have is hunger, thirst, fatigue, sickness, and maybe sexual frustration. I know with me, when I get tired, fatigue's a huge one for me. Because I find like I fight. There are days that I have to fight through my symptoms. And then when I'm tired, it is hard to fight. And a lot of my symptoms will come out in that manner. But my wife knows. She goes, okay, Adam's tired. I have to give him the space. Or I have to say, okay, let's do something else. Go take a nap. Go meditate. You'll feel better on the other end. And she's right. I always do. Any bodily sensation that recalls a trauma. Maybe you have, people that were raped or assaulted. They have sensations, right? Maybe they bumped their arm and they remember that time that they were grabbed aggressively. These can cause significant triggers for people. But unless you're paying attention to that, you won't know, right? Maybe you guys are going out to the store and you saw someone or something, and you're like, oh, hey, let's go over here. And you grab their arm and they pull away from you. You're like, whoa, what did I do? Because you got to know these triggers. You got to know that this little things can set people off. Right? There are very strong emotions that people go through that suffer with PTSD, especially feeling helpless, out of control, and trapped. That's where the pain turns into suffering. When you get into a place of helplessness or feeling like you don't have any control of your life, that's a big trigger for people that they stay in their suffering. So you have to give them the opportunity and go, okay, how do I do this? What can I do? So my question for you today, or the answer I want to give to you, is how do you help someone having maybe a flashback or a panic attack? Right? During a flashback, people often feel a sense of disassociation, as if they're like detached from their own body, and anything you do to ground them will help, right? Because when you have a flashback, they put themselves right back in that situation that caused their trauma. You have to be blunt. I remember when I was going through training for correctional service, you have to be blunt when you talk to people about mental health. If someone's wanting to commit suicide, you have to ask them the question, are you wanting to die right now? Now that's a hard question to ask somebody that's wanting to die, or if they're not. But that opens up that conversation. So if someone's having a flashback, you have to tell them, are you having a flashback? Right? Or you tell them specifically, you are having a flashback. You're here with me. Feel me. Give me a hug. Feel my skin. Ground me. Touch me. Listen to my voice. Be here with me. This is going to bring them back to the situation. Right? Tell them to look around the room. What's going on? Hey, do you hear that noise? Do you see that person over there? Be specific. Maybe encourage them to take a deep breath. Slow their breaths. Right? Hyperventilating will increase panic. So if you can have them slow their breath down, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. This will help them kind of reset. Make sure that they avoid sudden movements, right? They could be jumpy. It could be like, oh, what's going on? And anything might startle them. Now, these are things that you can do to help them get through this. Make sure that you don't touch them unless you ask. Say, look, I want to touch you. Give me a hug. They might be like, you know what? No, I can't have a hug right now. That's when you have to use the other techniques and say, okay, let's bring you back. Tell me something that's in the room, right? Play I Spy is a game that would help me get through, right? I'd be going through hypervigilance. I'd be like, oh man, I really feel like I'm with Lucas, and I'd start crying, and my wife would be like, look, show me something in the room that's red. Show me something in the room. Show me a picture that you actually love in our room, right? And these things would bring me back. Now, another thing you need to make sure that you do is do normal things with your loved one. When you're rebuilding their life and you're creating this success, and you have to start do things that are normal, right? But let them take the lead. Hey, what do you want to do today? Do you want to go out for a walk? Right? Let's go out for a walk. Right? Where do you want to go? Right? Let them take the lead. Sometimes you may have to kind of guide them and say, look, I think it's good if we just go for a walk in nature. Let's take the dog out. Or let's go look at something. What do they like to do? You have to rebuild trust. And this starts slowly, because what they've been through, they've lost that trust in so many different people, so many different things. So a few simple ways to create that trust is create routines, right? Minimize stress at home. Speak about the future and make plans. What are some goals that you guys want to do together in the future? A big one is to keep your promises. They've already been traumatized by something that's happened. Is there something you want to do in the future? Make sure when you say, yeah, let's go do this, go do it, right? Emphasize your loved one's strengths. What are the things that they're great at? Stop focusing only on their trauma and the negative. Focus on something that's going to move them, right? And look for ways to empower them, because they deserve to be empowered. They went through a single moment or a single situation that's causing them this stress. And that's when we really want to make sure that you allow them to have that ability to create that life that you want. But the biggest thing here, my friends, is you need to take care of yourself, right? Letting your family members' PTSD dominate your life while ignoring your own needs is a recipe for burnout. And we don't want you to burn out. We need you strong to be there for them, right? You know, an example that I always use is when you get on a plane, what do they tell you? Put your mask on first and then help them. So here's some things that I want you to do to take care of yourself, right? Take care of your physical needs. Get enough sleep. Maybe get some exercise. Go for a walk. If they don't want to go with you, that's fine. Eat properly and look after your own medical issues, right? If you're on medication, take your medication. Have a support system. Who are the people around you that can support you while you're going through this? Because you're also going through something too. Have family members, friends, maybe get yourself therapy, a support group, right? There's support groups out there for people supporting people with PTSD. Go get what you need. Make time for your own life, right? There are things in your life that you can do that you want to do. Go do them, right? Don't give up on your friends, hobbies, activities, things that you love to do, right? You have to have things that you look forward to. Spread the responsibility. Are there things that you're like, look, I need to go do something? Can someone come and be with the person suffering, right? And set your boundaries. Set your own personal boundaries. Be realistic about what you're capable of. Knowing your limits, communicating them to your family member and the others that are involved, right? And stick with these boundaries. If you get tired, take moments for yourself. It's all about personality, and it's all about making sure that you do the things in your life to create that life that you truly want. Now, I hope this gave you a little bit of insight, and I hope this gave you some inspiration to really take care of yourself, but also to be a support for that person that you love. And remember, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.